Matthew, and Sharon.
They'll often write a letter of their experience, and they'll hide it somewhere in these inns, in the rafters, in the floorboards, in the secret drawers, these colonial desks that have these secret drawers in them. And so this collective of people who write these experiences and share them with each other were calling themselves the Secret Drawer Society. And in particular, it was a particular inn called the Wayside Inn. So that was where I got the inspiration. And back then, it was very little known with regards to the internet. Now it's much more prevalent. And in fact, that's why we changed the title, because by the time we got around to publishing it, the Secret Drawer Society itself, along with the Wayside Inn, had quite a presence. And we didn't want to be in any sort of copyright issues with them, so we changed the title.
I also think it's worth saying, I know earlier Sharon was introduced as having, really focusing on high concepts, and we had a whole roundtable about this, and when you talk about the Secret Drawer Society, you have to kind of know what a secret drawer is, and then you have to think about what gets put into it as a letter, and so we just decided to shorten that all to Secret Letter Society. It sort of explained the concept better, without having all the stops in between, so it was a bit more high concept.
So we took the concept of, we'll call it the Secret Letter Society now. So the Secret Letter Society is a group of kids who come to this one particular inn every Halloween where they have a big celebration, and they gather in secret to read all of these letters to themselves every year. And they'll know if there are new letters, and they'll know if they can't find a letter from last year. And so there's a girl who's been sort of dragged along with her parents, who are travel writers, to this inn because it's haunted. And she doesn't want to be there, and she falls in with these kids, and she ends up finding a letter that no one has ever seen before. And it seems to be like the oldest secret letter in existence, and it ends up being the first clue to a treasure hunt where they discover Blackbeard's lost treasure. So that's the basic premise of the story. Do you want to say any more about that part of it? About the storyline? Shall we jump into?
We'll jump in. As part of the development for the pitch, so when we were developing this for TV animation, we actually worked with an animator's character designer, so we wanted to go ahead and show you a little bit about the iterations that the characters went through. The primary cast of 6 characters changed a lot during the development. So in the script, there were a certain number of characters, and that expanded a little bit, and the series kind of took hold. And so we have our main cast with Jenna as our main character, sort of young and precocious. And I'll go through them very fast. We're going to change the format just a little bit because I know we're running late.
Did you draw those?
These were not drawn by Sharon, actually. She worked with an actual character designer, an animator who works in television animation. He has a huge list of credits, but he helped kind of do the pitch Bible for us.
Lucky for me, he was the nobody back then, so I paid him a decent amount. But
Caught him on his way up. So I'm going to go through these really quick, but we have Jenna, the main character. She's very much kind of a rebellious prankster. She specializes in reading people and figuring out their tells. So people give away a lot about who they are and what they're thinking in their unconscious mannerisms, and she thinks of herself as kind of a people expert. So she's our main character, and her older and rather obnoxious sister is Raina. She's sort of the prima donna pain in the butt. She's a bit retro. She likes old movies and boys and horses and boys and dancing and boys. So she's along for the ride, usually just to annoy her sister. Nathan's our male lead, and I won't go so far as to say love interest for Jenna, but he's definitely our impetuous action hero. He's into all things extreme. He likes skateboarding and a little bit of paragliding and all kinds of stuff. So he tends to be Mr. Action for the team.
Are these high school students or what are they?
They're a bit younger than that. The characters range from about 13, so we'll say maybe older middle grade up into maybe freshman high school. So the book actually, in its final current iteration, is a middle grade novel, which means the characters end up ranging between 10 up through 15. It's right before you get into young adult. Usually the main character's age dictates the audience that you're writing towards. After Nathan, we had Milton, so really those 4, Jenna, Raina, Nathan, and Milton make up our core. Milton is our Q to Jenna's 007, so he is also quietly in love with Raina, and he
Gadgeteer.
So he he goes to great lengths to protect her and take care of her without her knowing. And then we've got Gabby, who is a little bit psychic. She comes from a long line of psychics and has had trouble with her powers. And she's often giving fun little clues to the group without them knowing it, of course, but predicting things that are going to happen in very subtle ways. And then I thought this was kind of fun. So in the development process, you can see the notes. So where we started was, actually where we started, and I didn't get it in here, was there was a site online that Sharon used to create this little avatar. So she put the hair on and the clothes, and that got shipped to the character designer. So based on that initial piece of art, he created this one, and she was defined as this sort of Halloween-themed character with the oranges and black, the colored hair, which we have a little bit represented in the audience, I was noticing earlier. And a little camouflage, so you can see her iteration. She had these big chunky boots at first, a little skull on the t-shirt that kind of got taken out and added back in, and then right down to the final iteration where her eyes were matched to her sister and the family resemblance kind of kicks in. So just a little bit of the fun character development that happened there.
You can see why he does the pitching and I'm just the worker bee.
Worker bee.
So we're going to do something a little different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass out some stuff so you guys can actually see, I think it's 5 pages of the screenplay. It's the same scene. It's a scene pretty square in the middle of the movie. Alongside those 5 pages, we're going to give you 2 pages from the comic book, and then the same sequence in the comic book. So you can see how it started as a screenplay and then became 2 comic pages. And then we'll have Sharon read all.
Can you enlarge that?
I can't, but we're going to give you copies of it. So this was my cue to pass out the pages. I don't expect anybody to read that off the screen. That's
good to show the formatting.
So these are the script pages. I'll set this up just briefly. This is a scene, like I said, in the middle of the book, where the kids they're well on their way through the adventure. They found several clues leading to what they believe is Blackbeard's treasure. And they find themselves in this underground grotto where a ship has been destroyed and marooned inside a cave. So we'll pass those around, and I think Sharon's going to read a small chunk of the book, if that's all right.
We have our own that we can read. You don't need to see on the
I think
screen.
she was turning
No,
back
I
on.
know, but I turned
It's
the
okay.
lights up so the audience
Yeah,
can
go ahead.
see what's standing.
Go ahead.
So an excerpt, is that appropriate? I don't know. Is that cool? All right.
So this is the effort here was you got the script pages, you got the comic book pages, and this is the final same sequence in the novel.
Yeah, I guess what we're getting at is in the screenplay, like say, a sequence might be 4 pages long. In the comic book script, it would only be 2 pages long. And in the novel, that might be expanded to maybe even double those pages depending on what needed to be added for internal dialogue on the main character or description of the landscape, that sort of thing. So like you said, the kids are well into the adventure by now. They found this labyrinth underground at the inn, and they've made their way to what they found was this crow's nest that was suspended in the middle of a cavern. And as soon as they stepped onto the crow's nest, they accidentally hit a lever, and it starts to rapidly fall along this pole. So they scramble around, and of course, at the very last minute, save themselves from their utter demise. And so they've made it. They worked together, and they had survived. Raina and Milton sat up as one, still wrapped in each other's arms, so they had grabbed onto each other during the fall. Raina jumped to her feet, growling, and wiped her arms as if contaminated by a nerve disease. Under normal circumstances, it would have been an ideal time for Jenna to make a snide remark, but when she finally climbed to her feet and turned to see where they had ended up, she was stunned into silence. They had landed in the cavernous grotto of what looked like a ship's graveyard. Remnants of old ship hulls towered over them like gargantuan broken skeletons in a sea of sandy ruin. They stepped off the platform and drifted further into the cavern. Wow, was all Jenna could say. She thought of Merlin. Merlin is Jenna's brother who passed just months before the events of the story take place. So, and he was probably her best friend, and she considers the only person who really understood her. So she's taking his death really hard and has been rebelling and playing a lot of pranks and getting in a lot of trouble. So she thought of Merlin, and a heavy sense of sadness came over her, combined with an overpowering feeling of awe. She'd never, in all her years of wayward shenanigans, seen anything like this. She suspected that Merlin hadn't either. Gabby stepped closer to Peter. Where are we? A loud chink sounded behind them. They snapped their heads in the direction of the crow's nest, which started rising back up into the darkness. That's our only way back, Nathan cried. He raced back toward the crow's nest and took a flying leap, but the platform had risen too high. He landed face first in the sand. The six of them watched in horror as their only means of escape rumbled back up into the darkness and disappeared. Nathan sat up, spitting sand. Gabby looked at Jenna. Her eyes were two perfect, terrified circles. How are we going to get back? She asked. Somebody's bound to find the hole in the lighthouse floor eventually. Eventually, Raina said. Eventually we could be all dead from starvation. Or worse. Peter held his pot belly in horror. Wait, there's something worse than starvation? Well, I'm not gonna just sit here, Nathan said, wiping sand off his pants. There has to be another way out. He moved deeper into the enormous cavern. Milton stopped him. Wait! He removed what looked like a small pad of Post-its from his pocket. Each sheet was covered in the tiny tracing stickers she saw Milton applying to the letters. He placed a sticker on each of them. Not wanting to get too close to Jenna, he placed hers on her head bandana, in case we get separated. As they moved deeper into the ship's graveyard, they found Nathan climbing up the side of an overturned freighter. Peter raised up, his face eager. He tested the sturdiness of an age-old plank and started climbing up himself. Gabby stopped and peered into the crumbling porthole. She suddenly stepped back, holding her head. There are a lot of stories here. She blinked up at Jenna and pushed her glasses up her nose. Anger, greed, sadness, love. Love? Really? Jenna said. Nathan called out from atop the freighter. How do you think all these ships got here? He asked. I think I'm going to kind of skip ahead here. The kids are marveling at these ships, and then Jenna decides to kind of go off on her own for a short time. Let me see here.
Need more copies?
You want me to go straight?
More copies?
What's that?
Faith, are you looking at yours? Yeah, because we only had 4 copies handed out?
Yeah, they weren't meant to be following along so much as just show you the change in format and the change in the length of the pieces. If you want, I'm going to just skip ahead to where the comic book starts. Let's see here.
Speaker.
Here it is.
Sorry, we didn't get to make it.
All right.
Let's see. So what happens is Jenna separates herself and she goes into this overturned ship and she finds this trunk full of stuff and she breaks the latch and she's marveling at this old parasol and this old doll and a mirror. And the kids all come to find her, and as they walk in, they sort of look wide-eyed behind her, and she doesn't know what's going on. And behind her, the clothes from the chests are sort of forming in the air to make what looks like a ghost of Blackbeard the pirate. And then a few pirates also behind him from the other clothes all start to form up. And the kids all freeze for a moment because they think they're all about to die, and the apparition sort of race past them, and they're like, huh? And they run outside into the cavern, and what they witness is the story of Blackbeard that nobody knows. So the ghost of Blackbeard is communicating with the kids and really telling them what really happened, when the historical, it's actually historically accurate that Blackbeard was known to have gone straight for about 2 years before he died. So he was, this horrible, so he's a horrible pirate, and then for about 2 years he became like a businessman on the coast. And then all of a sudden went back to pirating. Nobody really knows why. And then he was killed by the Navy. So suppose the way we tell the story is that Blackbeard fell in love. That's when he went straight, and he was framed by his best friend and was accused of this horrible damage and this big theft of some riches from the Queen. And he took the blame for it because no one was going to believe him anyway. So he had to leave her, and he sort of took the blame for that, and that's why he's still a ghost, and sort of the truth comes out. So let's see. That takes place, and then where the comic book starts, here it says, still reeling from the new revelation, the group stood in silence for a moment. They were congregated near an enormous Dutch frigate. The bottom of the ship was ripped and torn, exposing most of the interior hull. On the side of the ship was an emblem, the bulk of it hidden by barnacles. Something about the emblem caught Milton's eye, and he moved closer to examine it in detail. His eyes went wide. No way. What's up, Milton? Nathan asked. The Queen Anne's Revenge. It's the Queen Anne's Revenge. He motioned toward the barnacle-infested emblem. Nathan darted over and studied it too. The others made their way over. So, Raina said, what's the big deal? Remember what I told you? It was Blackbeard's first ship, Peter said. He put his hands on the emblem as if he could give new life to the vessel or maybe absorb its latent pirate energy. After a moment, he stepped back and hurried inside. The others followed, including Jenna. Hey, where are you going? Raina said. We need to find a way out. The group picked through the ruined chairs, crates, and other items littering the inside of the hole. Raina joined them, clearly annoyed that no one was listening to her. Peter examined an old iron cannon. The story goes that before Blackbird retired, he actually ran the queen aground in the cove, took all the loot, and abandoned everybody to the tide. But now, I don't know what to believe. Gabby, energized by newfound courage after surviving the ghostly puppet show, pulled something white and round from the sand, a human skull with one gold tooth. She shrieked, dropping it back into the sand. Nathan, I'm confused about something, Jenna said. She picked up a dusty, tarnished compass. Obviously somebody attacked the queen's ship. If Blackbeard didn't do it, then who did? Who cares? They're all dead, Raina said, walking straight into a sheet of cobwebs. She shrieked louder than Gabby had, brushing her arms and hair furiously. That's it. I'm not taking another step until someone tells me what's going on. She stood defiantly, folding her arms. A piece of cobweb still clung to her hair. Well, there's nothing down here, Nathan said to Milton. Let's try on deck. He darted up a rickety stairway that led to an upper deck. Once again, everyone but Raina raced off, but she refused to be defeated so easily this time. She stomped her foot and leaned against a rotten plank. I'm waiting, she called out. The weak plank, surprised by a shift in weight after a few centuries of standing undisturbed, crumbled. The crossbeams above her shuddered and gave way. Debris from the upper floor rained down on her, including a severed skeleton that fell directly into Raina's arms. She screamed, even louder this time, and ran upstairs like her life depended on it. And then the Thetas go on to have them be on the top of the ship, and Jenna ends up discovering a secret hatch that she falls into, and of course the adventure continues on from there. So that's really the presentation part of tonight, because Matt and I really prefer to sort of interact with you and answer questions. So feel free to ask me some. And we've got experience in video games, comics, film. We're making a break into film this year as well, and then and now novels. So feel free to ask me anything. Yeah.
You think that kids really loves to fantasize more than reality? Do they?
Do you mean like today's children?
Yeah.
Gosh, I can really only answer for myself. I mean, the answer is still yes for me. You know, and I'm a product of my childhood. You know, I grew up attending science fiction conventions. My mom was a Trekkie, and then Sherlock. She's been a member of the Sherlock Holmes Society since I was born. So, you know, I was a geek and a cosplayer before those words were even coined. So I don't know how to answer the question. I'm a big fan of YA personally, but I don't know how much middle grade. I mean, there are a few really standout middle grade series as well that that and I really enjoyed with our children. So I'd like to think the answer is yes. Yeah.
Is the novel a graphic novel?
It's not. It is just a middle grade novel with no pictures.
Chapter?
At the time that we developed the series pitch, that's when we had the comic book pages commissioned back then to give them something visual. At the time, we were planning on moving forward with the comic book.
Okay, and can you just give us a quick rundown of how you got it, how you published it, and how you got it, and where it is?
Yeah, that's your turn.
So this was a fun education, and we talked a little bit about my driving Sharon to write the novel because I love the story and I think it's a lot of fun and it spoke to me. I think I like mysteries. We ultimately sent out, I think, 50 query letters to agents and managers, most of which did read the novel. And what we got was an education in how difficult it is to sell a middle grade novel. I think right now, young adult and new adult, which is a new category that's been created, are by far the most prevalent in ebooks and in, I think, in commercial sales. Next to, I think there's some other categories, and not coming from I published comic books for 7 years, but not coming from a literary publishing background, I think we were a little naive about it. I think the genre categories are out there for a reason, and that's so that audiences can find the novels they want to read. So it's a natural first question for a publisher to say, what is the genre for your novel? And when you tend to blur the line, or if you're outside those categories, I think you make it much, much more difficult, not just to get published, but if that publisher picks up for an audience to find your novel.
Oh, sorry. No, I just, so, go ahead.
So ultimately, we got a lot of rejections, and what we decided to do was go ahead and publish it ourselves. So we did both the ebook and the print version. The print version went through CreateSpace, which is Amazon's publishing imprint, which I'm sure people have done a lot of fun stuff with, which I highly recommend, by the way. It was a great experience. And they distribute through Ingram and a number of other commercial commercial distributors to Barnes & Noble, and we're doing a library program now for the novel. But that remains true. Our initial observations are that marketing a middle grade novel is, at this point, challenging because middle grade readers 10 to 13 don't tend to be online or be on iPads necessarily ordering the books. They definitely read on iPads and they live off of the video games there. But in terms of purchasing, they're not a big consumer of ebooks. So we've had, I think, more luck with the print version, oddly enough, than we have with the ebook version. But it was a fun process. We got to design, or I did, the cover, which was built from a lot of the art we had commissioned along the way. We took pitch art and composited that and did the back there. And they, it's a fantastic, I see some heads nodding, but they give you the templates to use for formatting the book properly, chapter breakdowns, table of contents, that sort of thing.
You were considering some other source besides CreateSpace at the time, though, right?
There are a couple alternatives, but I felt like CreateSpace was by far more plugged in to Amazon. They also, we did do some things with the ISBN number, which I have the background with my video game company in creating ISBN numbers, so we wanted to make sure that was a portable number that could live outside the Amazon ecosystem as well. So,
What do you mean by that?
there are three options when you go to get your ISBN number through CreateSpace. You can have Amazon give you one, but if you do that, then CreateSpace is the publisher. You're married to them as the printer of the book, and you need to go through all of their channels. So there's no way to really get distribution outside of CreateSpace. There's a second option where you can go buy your own, and so the publisher on the book is actually listed as Storyhouse Studios, which is Sharon's development company. And then there's a third option where you can assign your own block. So you use a totally separate ISBN that you go buy.